He woke with a gasp. His heart pounded a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Sweat slicked his skin. Where was he? This wasn't his room. Panic clawed at his throat, choking him. He tried to sit up, to call out, but his voice emerged a strangled croak. His hand flew to his throat, but it wasn't his hand. It was meaty, calloused, alien. His eyes darted around the unfamiliar room, taking in the drab wallpaper, the heavy oak furniture, the faint scent of mildew. Nothing made sense. Who was he? Where was he? He stumbled out of bed, his legs shaky, his mind a swirling vortex of confusion. A face stared back at him from the dusty mirror on the wall. It was his face, and yet it wasn't. Older, heavier, etched with lines he didn't recognize. He searched the room frantically, hoping for something, anything familiar. A wallet lay on the nightstand. He snatched it up, his hands trembling. The driver's license inside showed a face he vaguely recognized, a name that meant nothing to him. John Smith. John Smith? That couldn't be right. He couldn't remember. Panic surged, threatening to drown him. He sank to the floor, his head in his hands, as a horrifying thought took root in his mind. What if this wasn't a dream? What if this was his life now? The thought was a physical blow, leaving him gasping for air. He was trapped in a life that wasn't his, a body that felt alien, a reality that was nothing more than a cruel, twisted joke. And the worst part? He couldn't remember the life he'd lost, the life that felt more real than this waking nightmare. Days bled into weeks. John Smith, as he was forced to call himself, tried to adapt to his new reality. He went through the motions of life, working at a job he couldn't remember starting, living in a house that felt cold and empty. But the feeling of wrongness never left him. It clung to him like a shroud, a constant reminder that he was living a lie. He was haunted by fragments of memories, fleeting glimpses of another life. A woman's laughter, the warmth of the sun on his skin, the scent of pine needles in the air. These fragments were like pieces of a shattered mirror, reflecting a life he couldn't quite grasp. He started jotting down these memories, these whispers of a forgotten past, in a worn notebook he found tucked away in a drawer. He filled page after page with disjointed sentences, fragmented thoughts, desperate pleas to a self he could barely remember. The notebook became his lifeline, his only connection to the man he used to be. One day, while sifting through his belongings, he stumbled upon a photograph tucked away in a book. It was a picture of him, the real him, smiling broadly, his arm around a woman with sparkling eyes and a warm smile. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. He remembered her, Sarah. His heart ached with a longing so intense it brought tears to his eyes. The forgotten life, the life he had dismissed as a dream, was real, and he was trapped here in this waking nightmare while Sarah, his Sarah, existed only in the flickering shadows of his memory. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He had to get back. Back to Sarah, back to his life, back to himself. But how? The answer, he realized with a chilling certainty, lay in his dreams. If he could dream his way into this life, maybe he could dream his way out. He became obsessed. He devoured books on sleep studies, lucid dreaming, anything that could help him unlock the door to his subconscious. He transformed his spare room into a makeshift sleep lab, complete with an EEG machine, a dream journal, and blackout curtains. He meticulously documented his dreams, searching for patterns, for clues, for any sign that he was getting closer. Night after night, he subjected himself to the torture of his own mind. He'd wake up from nightmares, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. But he pressed on, driven by a desperate hope and fueled by the memory of Sarah's smile. He experimented with sleep schedules, with meditation, with binaural beats, pushing his mind and body to their limits. He became a ghost haunting the halls of his own life, his eyes hollow, his skin pallid, his every waking thought consumed by the dream life that beckoned him. He knew he was walking a tightrope, teetering on the edge of madness. But the thought of spending the rest of his life trapped in this borrowed existence, this pale imitation of a life, was more terrifying than any nightmare. He had to try. He had to get back to Sarah. He had to go home. Then, one night, it happened. He was floating, adrift in a sea of swirling colors and fragmented thoughts. He felt a jolt, a sudden shift in the fabric of the dream, and he knew. He was in control. He could shape this reality, bend it to his will. He willed himself to Sarah, focusing on her face, her laughter, the scent of her perfume. The world solidified around him. He was back in their apartment, filled with the warm glow of the setting sun. Sarah was there, her back to him, humming softly as she cooked dinner. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched her shoulder. She turned, her face breaking into a radiant smile. "You're back," she whispered, her eyes shining with love. "I knew you'd come back to me." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, overwhelmed by a wave of relief so intense it brought tears to his eyes. He was home. He was finally home. But as he held her, a sliver of doubt wormed its way into his mind. Something wasn't right. Sarah felt different, colder, her touch lacking its usual warmth. Her eyes, once filled with love, now held a flicker of something else, something dark and unsettling. He tried to shake off the feeling, to convince himself it was just his imagination. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was slowly taking root. The dream shifted, the edges blurring, the colors turning sickly and wrong. He felt a chill run down his spine as he realized with growing horror that this wasn't the dream he remembered. This was something else entirely. This was a nightmare. The nightmare unfolded with terrifying clarity. He found himself trapped in a repeating loop of gruesome deaths. Each death was more horrific than the last, each one searing itself onto his mind with agonizing detail. He was stabbed, shot, burned alive, his screams echoing endlessly in the void. He died again and again, each death a hammer blow to his sanity. The fear became a living thing, a predator stalking him through the labyrinth of his own mind. He tried to escape, to claw his way back to consciousness, but the nightmare held him fast, a cruel puppet master yanking at his strings. Terror became his constant companion. He was a prisoner in his own mind, forced to relive his own demise in an endless, agonizing cycle. The line between dream and reality blurred, the nightmare bleeding into his waking hours. He became withdrawn, haunted by the horrors he had witnessed. Sleep, once his refuge, was now his tormentor. He was a broken man, his spirit crushed by the weight of his own death throes. He was lost, adrift in a sea of darkness, with no hope of rescue. One night, in the midst of his torment, a voice cut through the darkness. It was a whisper at first, faint and distant, but it grew stronger, more insistent, until it filled his nightmare with its strange melody. "Wake up, John," the voice urged, laced with an odd tenderness. It's time to wake up. He opened his eyes to darkness. His heart pounded a frantic rhythm against his ribs, his body slick with sweat. He was in his bed, in the unfamiliar room, the nightmare receding like a tide pulling back from the shore. He lay there for a long moment, catching his breath, clinging to the tattered remnants of his sanity. The voice came again, closer this time, a low rumble that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the room. "Don't you recognize me, John?" He turned his head, his heart pounding in his chest. A figure emerged from the shadows, taking shape in the moonlight streaming through the window. It was grotesque, hunched and twisted, with eyes that glowed an eerie yellow in the darkness. Fear threatened to consume him, but something in those eyes, a glimmer of something akin to concern, held him rooted to the spot. "Who are you?" he croaked, his voice raspy with fear and exhaustion. The figure shuffled closer, its movements oddly graceful for its distorted form. "I am the guardian of this place," it rasped, its voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. "I have watched over you, John Smith. I have seen your pain." John stared at the creature, his mind reeling. This grotesque being, this denizen of his nightmares, claimed to be his guardian? It was absurd, impossible, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that it was telling the truth. "Why?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Why are you helping me?" The creature tilted its head, its glowing eyes studying him with an unnerving intensity. "Because you are loved, John Smith," it rasped. "Even here in this place of shadows, you are not alone." John recoiled, his mind struggling to grasp the creature's words. Loved? By this thing? It was ludicrous, preposterous, and yet a flicker of warmth spread through his chest, a spark of hope in the desolate wasteland of his despair. Could it be true? Could this grotesque being, this embodiment of his nightmares, truly care for him? As if reading his thoughts, the creature extended a clawed hand, its touch surprisingly gentle. "You have chased shadows for too long, John Smith," it rasped. "You have sought solace in a dream, a memory of a life that is gone. But you are needed here in this reality. You are needed by those who love you." John looked down at the creature's hand, his mind a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Fear warred with curiosity, revulsion with a strange sense of gratitude. He had sought solace in the familiar, in the memory of a love that felt safe and true. But what if love, true love, could blossom even in the most unexpected of places? He looked around the room, at the drab wallpaper, the heavy furniture, the faint scent of mildew that had once filled him with such despair. It wasn't the life he had dreamed of, the life he had so desperately tried to reclaim, but it was his life. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't as bad as he had convinced himself it was. He thought of the people he had met in this life, the friends he had made, the colleagues who had shown him kindness. They weren't Sarah, but they were real. Their laughter, their smiles, their simple acts of human connection were all testaments to the fact that he was not alone in this world. He looked back at the creature, his fear replaced by a newfound sense of understanding. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "for showing me the truth." The creature nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. "Go now, John Smith," it rasped. "Embrace the life that is yours, and know that even in the darkest of times you are not alone. You are loved." And with that, the creature faded back into the shadows, leaving John alone with his thoughts. He rose from the bed, his body no longer heavy with despair. He walked to the window, opening it wide, and took a deep breath of the crisp morning air. The world felt different, new, filled with possibilities he had been too blind to see. He stepped outside, into the light of a new day. The nightmare was over. The dream was gone, and John Smith was finally awake. He carried the memory of Sarah in his heart, a bittersweet ache that reminded him of the power of love and the importance of cherishing the present moment. He embraced his reality, flaws and all, finding solace in the simple joys of everyday life. He reconnected with his friends, his laughter coming easier now, his heart lighter. He found joy in his work, in the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. Life wasn't perfect, but it was his, and he was determined to live it to the fullest, to honor the love that surrounded him, even if it came from the most unexpected of sources. He had learned a valuable lesson, a truth that had been revealed to him in the heart of his darkest nightmare. Love, like hope, could blossom even in the most barren of landscapes. And so, John Smith, the man who had once been lost in a labyrinth of dreams and nightmares, found his way back to the light. He embraced the beauty of the ordinary, the preciousness of each fleeting moment. He had learned to appreciate the love that surrounded him, even if it came from a creature of shadows, a guardian of his nightmares. For in the end, it was love, in all its strange and wondrous forms, that saved him.